I was dragged to the main science floor again. Confused, I glanced around before being thrown in the middle of the room. What students? Where were... Oh... One by one they slid from the shadows, some more effectively than others. 2 of them I heard coming in, while some were almost as silent as Barb. The Shades. Raiders' stealth experts, it seemed. Among peers I felt outclassed. Each was clad in darker clothing, with dyed manes and coats of dark blues and greens.
What we have here, my students, is a little filly who was hired to help us. I promised him induction into our group, in return for some materials acquirement.
I didn't... A raider bucked me across the side of the face, choking on my scream. I fell, clutching my snout. Drips of blood landed on my hooves.
Silence when the boss is talking!
Barb just watched the display with a proud look. Unlike Sculpt, he seemed to love the word boss.
Now, this little filly didn't come through. He knows our plans and suddenly decided not to appreciate my offer, deciding that apparently his chances for escape lie better with the traitor.
A chorus of seething hatred echoed from the group around me. In the darkness it was hard to count. 5, perhaps? Trembling, I kept my head down on the ground, trying to sniffle my bleeding nose with a hoof.
I'm not unwilling to permit him another chance, you see. However, like any of the Shades, he cannot go unpunished. Back in the mall, we would be stopped. But for once, here, we have an opportunity to dispense Raider Code properly.
Barb lowered himself to me, his thin eyes boring into my skull.
You may see me do little, but that's the point, Philly. I'm not like him. I don't need bluster, example, and visual threat. Oh no, no shadow is safe for you anymore. I do my work out of sight, find others to accomplish my ends, or even step in myself if needs be. Oh, you probably think I'm just a bully, picking on those I can't go for. Just remember to ask the traitor about the massacre at Whitetail someday. Fear me, Philly. Better than being against me. You get punished, as you shall be by my own students. As such, I decree...
He was interrupted before he could finish, or rather was drowned out. The entire stable shook, and I felt the rush of air blow past us. The sharp rumble of an explosion came rippling down the dark passageways, and distant voices could be heard. The sound had come from a few levels above. I thought. A dull sound. Terminals flickered and rolling platforms rattled as every one of the raiders looked to the ceiling. Dust particles fell along with slivers of rust. Barb snarled as the explosion was followed by far-off sounds of thunderous violence and gunfire.
They're a bit earlier than I had predicted. Chris, Dirk, Shiv, with me. You two deal with the filly, then join us in the atrium. Those idiots in the gang won't know what to do without us.
He took off, his horn shadowing over as he seemed to blend into the pitch black after a few feet and entirely disappeared. Behind him, 3 of the Shades faded more naturally into the dark. What was that? What did he mean, they? So what do we do with him? The mayor cackled as her eyes ran over me like a predator. Well, at least I wasn't the only one wondering.
I don't know. Barb says kill, I kill. Barb says steal, I steal. I'm not much for
Leadership, you stupid oaf. Fuck Chib. No wonder Barb wanted you on this team. He's got no worries about you trying to assassinate him and take over.
Well, I just like doing things. So what do we do to him?
Her face turned to me. A thin and straight long mane drooped over one scarred eye. She had actually filed her teeth into fangs that glinted when she smiled sadistically at me. She may have sounded more intelligent than your average raider, but like Barb, it was underlaid with the same maddened mindset to hurt and abuse other ponies for the sheer hell of it. This was a broken pony, one who wasn't thinking sane thoughts, the kind that Brimstone had said raider clans drew in to use as enforcers. I could see the manic twitches in her eyes.
I got something I've been wanting to do to some pony for a while. Hold him down.
Chib's magic strengthened before he climbed atop me and held me down by his weight alone. The mare grabbed my head in her hooves, standing up to look right down at me, saliva dripping from her fanged mouth, landing on my goggles.
Don't, please! I'll do anything you want!
Her magic prized my mouth open. A shard of glass from the wreckage lifted in her magic field.
Barb doesn't like ponies talking back or interrupting him. I'm going to make sure you can't whine ever again.
I stared with wide eyes. My mouth? My tongue? What? No, I'd never be able to draw properly ever again.
Say, ah, little buck.
How's about you say lights on, motherfuckers? The pair twisted their heads around at the new voice ringing out, before everything turned white. My eyes seared, and I heard the raiders scream. On sheer instinct, I drove one of my bottom hooves deep and hard into the buck's nethers. His scream went up to appropriately filly-like levels, his entire weight falling away from me. Rolling off the desk, my vision finally adjusted as I saw every light panel in the entire room had activated. Squinting, I finally saw my savior galloping into the room, directly at the pair of raiders around me. "Murky, get down!" Glimmerlight's voice was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard at that moment. Diving to the floor, I heard her long rifle crack sharply, followed by a bellow of agony from the stallion. The other raider, the mare, rounded on Glimmer and began charging as she saw my friend reloading the single-shot weapon. The raider mare was fast, very fast. Only Glimmer's speed with the reload gave her a chance for a second shot, sending the mare diving behind a desk to avoid it. The raider seemed to fade into the darkness behind the desks, shadowed from the panel lighting. Glimmer took to a tabletop, seeking her out. Seeing the stallion standing back up again with a gaping wound in his side, I realized his eyes were on me. The wound didn't stop him grabbing a club and bucking the desk to the side to come for me as his companion taunted and occupied Glimmer's attention. Panicking, I fled, diving and rolling under the next desk as I felt his charge carry him right into it behind me. I felt a small measure of triumph. He'd been stunned! I could just run! He had faked the crash. The moment I stepped out of the desk, the stallion landed on me. He was slow to decide, but I had forgotten who these ponies were. Barb's students in the art of sneaky methods and misdirection. What I thought was him haphazardly careening into the desk had just been him leaping atop it.
"Kick me in the plums, will you? I'll rip your throat out for that."
He wasn't kidding. Knowing he could ditch stealth now that he was right on top of me, his teeth gnashed down, seeking to grab my flesh in a mad blood-raged frenzy. I heard Glimmer's rifle firing once more as she fought the mare, scaring her into cover. It gave me an idea. Batting his face with a front hoof, I pulled my empty BB pistol free and aimed it directly at the stallion's face. Diving to the side off of me, the stallion took cover with a sudden, rushed look of panic at seeing a barrel in his face. He wasn't the only one who could trick some pony else. It gave me a chance to get up, only to feel the gun yanked from my teeth by his magic. This wasn't going well. I had nothing to actually do against him. I was a non-combatant, not a killer. The stallion charged, the club raised high in his magic. He came right for me. Terrified, I backed away into the darkness of a side room. My little heart felt ready to tear itself free. I couldn't fight a raider. I watched him step into the doorway. Tall, broad, strong, weathered. He'd never listen to pleas. Fearfully pulling my metal ruler out, I prepared to do all I could. Mustering my scant courage, I let all the frustration boil up in me, and let out a blood-curdling war cry, far louder than I ever knew I could. One that sounded like it held the rage of 100 violated ponies whose memories had been desecrated. One that grew to a keening howl. The stallion stopped, his eyes wide and his face drained of all color, before he screamed, turning and fleeing. My confusion barely had a chance to catch up with the reality. That hadn't been me that had howled. He had looked like he'd just seen I turned, seeing it right behind me. Dead eyes, their shape even more vague than Barb's, resting within a listless and immaterial presence that I couldn't properly focus on, as though looking at something only vaguely remembered from a dream. Every muscle of mine locked up as it stared right through me. Bing, bing! Even as the sound of a scooter's little bell chimed, the shade faded into the background and disappeared amongst the darkness once again. Standing there, eyes locked on the thick black, I didn't know what to think. "Hey, Murky! Nothing big, but a little help!" Broken from my thoughts, I turned to see Glimmer desperately dodging shards of glass being hurled at her via telekinesis. Glimmer bore a few running scars along her neckline. These shades weren't playing around when it came to aim. The stallion had fled, but the mare was as lethal as they came, diving from cover to cover and using Glimmer's slow-loading rifle against her. Alone, Glimmer would no doubt be overcome. Rushing forward, I leapt atop a desk to look for something appropriate and... Whoa! Diving back down, shards of glass whizzed over my head. I saw Barb's student grin at me and tauntingly blow a kiss before the glass reversed and came right back at me from behind. Screaming, I leapt over the desk again, chased by the shards as they pinged and embedded into the objects around me. I felt one piece dig into my right flank, stifled a scream, and fell hard from the desk onto the floor, taking out a skeleton with my body weight. Horrified, I kicked myself away from it, clutching my leg. Glimmer's rifle fired again, forcing the mare to cover. If only I had... Sculpt's pistol sat ahead of me. Without a thought, I grabbed it in my mouth, feeling around with my tongue. It seemed the safety was still off. Staying low, I began to creep forward, kicking a wheeled platform out to distract the mare. With any luck, she'd... Glass whizzed into and around the platform like a swarm of angry hornets, trying to hit a non-existent Murky No. 7 behind it. Elated at the success, I began making my move under the noise cover, and galloped low to the ground from desk to desk. Glimmer's rifle clacked to load once again, before she screamed and audibly dove to the side away from the razor-tipped projectiles.
You honestly think you can take on a member of the Shades? Chib was the rookie, but just try me. I'll take you both on!
Well, try this for your sneaky business. Hopping atop the desk, I appeared right behind her. No time to think about the morals of killing. I was saving a friend. My mouth pressed down on the trigger. The mare slowly turned to look at me, the mad grin staring right into my eyes. The weapon just clicked. Blood frozen, I pulled the trigger again and again, beginning to get a sense of how the Magister must have felt. She just made a coy look at me, her horn glowing and tugging the weapon from my mouth.
Stupid buck, I'm a unicorn. Just a little telekinesis and bam! Your safety is back on!
Using the distraction, Glimmerlight hurled a chair with her own telekinesis before galloping forward, firing to give herself cover. Aiming down the sights, she took aim at the raider's head, another bullet flying into the chamber with little difficulty. Laughing hysterically, the raider turned to her.
And the same for you! A little adjustment to your gun and...
Her face drooped.
What? Where is it? Where is the safety?
Glimmerlight merely winked at her.
Is not safe.
She snapped the bolt closed.
Is gun.
And pulled the trigger.